Have you ever trusted someone completely, only to discover they were planning against you all along? What I'm about to tell you actually happened to me. And let me warn you, this story has more twists than a roller coaster. If you like stories where the truth finally comes out, you're going to want to hear this one. Hit that like button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Now, let me tell you how a terrible tragedy revealed someone's true character, and how my son protected me, even after he was gone. It was a regular Tuesday night. I was already asleep when my phone rang at 3:17 in the morning. When your phone rings that late, you know something terrible has happened. "Ma'am," my son David's voice sounded strange, scared. "Something's wrong. My chest hurts. I can't." Then the phone went silent. I drove to the hospital as fast as I could, but I was too late. The doctors told me David had a heart attack. My 45-year-old son, who was healthy and full of life, was gone. Just like that. In one moment, everything changed. I stood in that cold hospital hallway, and nothing felt real. David was my only child. I couldn't believe he was really gone. His wife Stephanie stood next to me. She looked shocked, of course, but there was something else in her eyes. Something I couldn't quite understand. Was it relief? No, I told myself. That couldn't be right. I must be imagining things because I was so upset. What happens now? I asked quietly, still trying to make sense of everything. Stephanie straightened her shoulders. For just a second, her sad face disappeared. "Now we deal with what's real, Eleanor. David is gone, and I have to make some decisions." Her voice sounded so cold, so distant. Stephanie and I had never been super close, but David had always been the connection between us. He helped us get along. Now he was gone, and I was starting to realize that without him, things were going to be very different. "Of course, dear," I said, trying to reach for her hand. "We'll get through this sad time together." She pulled her hand away from mine. "We'll see about that." I should have understood what those words meant. I should have known she was warning me. But instead, I thought she was just sad and dealing with it in her own way. People handle sadness differently, right? Some people cry a lot. Others become quiet and keep their feelings inside. I thought Stephanie was just keeping her feelings inside. I was wrong. The next 3 days were a blur. We had to plan David's funeral. I offered to help pay for everything. After all, David was my son. But Stephanie said no. "I'm his wife," she kept saying. "I know what he would have wanted." Okay, I thought. That's fair. So instead, I focused on writing nice things to say about David at the funeral. I called all our relatives to tell them the sad news. And I tried very hard not to fall apart. I was 67 years old. I had already said goodbye to my parents and my husband. But losing your child is the worst kind of sadness anyone can feel. The night before the funeral, I was sitting in David's old bedroom, the one he grew up in. The room was in the house he shared with Stephanie. I looked at the pictures on the dresser. There was David graduating from college. David and Stephanie on their wedding day. David holding his baby nephew at Christmas. But I noticed something strange. There were no recent pictures of David and me together. All those photos had disappeared. When did Stephanie remove them? And why? Before I could think about it more, someone knocked on the door. It was Stephanie. She wasn't even trying to hide the mean look in her eyes anymore. "We need to talk, Eleanor." The funeral was beautiful, I have to admit. The flowers were gorgeous. The music was David's favorite songs. Everything was perfect. What wasn't perfect was watching Stephanie act like a sad widow while making comments about moving forward and starting new chapters. I was standing with other people who came to say goodbye to David when I heard Stephanie talking to her sister behind some tall flowers. She thought no one could hear her. The life insurance money alone will pay for the house for 2 years, she was saying quietly. And without the extra costs. What did she mean? What about Eleanor? Her sister asked. Where will she go? Stephanie laughed. It was a mean laugh. That's not my problem anymore. She can figure it out like other adults do. My heart felt like it stopped beating. You see, I had been living with David and Stephanie for 2 years. It started when I sold my own house to give them $40,000 for their down payment. David said it would only be temporary just until I found a smaller place to live. But somehow, temporary became permanent. I got comfortable there. I helped around the house. I cooked dinner. I felt useful. Apparently, I was just fooling myself. Kicked out, Eleanor. Stephanie appeared next to me, acting nice for everyone watching. Could you help me in the kitchen? We need to discuss some things. I followed her through the crowd of people. In the kitchen, she closed the door. Then she turned to look at me. I'm going to be honest, she said, sounding like she was talking about business, not family. This house is in David's name, which means it's mine now. I need time and space to deal with my sadness without complications. Complications. I kept my voice calm, even though my heart was beating fast. You living here, it's not working anymore, Eleanor. I need my privacy. Her words hurt like someone had hit me. Stephanie, I understand you're sad, but surely we can. No. She held up her hand. I've made my decision. I'll give you until tomorrow evening to pack your things. That should be enough time. I stared at her. I was looking for any sign of the woman who used to call me Mom. The woman who hugged me at Christmas. The woman who cried happy tears when David proposed to her. That woman was gone. In her place was someone cold and mean. Where exactly do you expect me to go? I asked. Stephanie shrugged like she didn't care. You're a grown woman, Eleanor. You'll figure something out. The casual cruelty, the way she didn't even seem to care, took my breath away. David would be horrified if he heard this conversation. I said. David's dead. The words came out flat and final. And the sooner you accept that, the better off we'll both be. I packed my entire life into 4 suitcases and 2 boxes. 67 years of living, reduced to what would fit in my car trunk. As I folded my clothes and wrapped my few photos in newspaper, I kept waiting. I kept thinking Stephanie would come upstairs and apologize. Maybe she'd say she spoke out of sadness and grief. Of course I could stay until I found somewhere else to go. She never came. Instead, at exactly 6 p.m. the next day, she appeared in my doorway with her arms crossed. Time's up, Eleanor. I zipped my last suitcase and looked around the room. The walls were bare now. It looked like a guest room again, which I guess it always had been. I'll need a few more minutes to get everything to my car, I said. I'll help you. It wasn't an offer. She just wanted to make sure I left quickly. We made 3 trips to my car in complete silence. As I loaded the last box, I turned to say goodbye. Maybe to try one more time to reach whatever kindness might still be left in her. I know you're angry with me for some reason, I said quietly. I wish I knew what I'd done wrong so I could fix it. Stephanie's face didn't soften even a little bit. You didn't do anything wrong, Eleanor. You just exist. You take up space in my house, in my life, in my way. David felt sorry for you, but I don't. The honesty was brutal. But at least it was honest. I see, I said. I got in my car and rolled down the window. Will you at least tell me if there's going to be an official reading of David's will? I assume he left instructions for his belongings. Why would he leave you anything? Stephanie sounded genuinely confused. You're not his wife. And it's not like you ever helped us financially. The irony was so thick I almost laughed. The $40,000 I'd given them for their house down payment might disagree with that statement. But clearly, Stephanie had either conveniently forgotten about it, or she'd convinced herself it was a gift, not a loan. Of course, I said. Silly of me to think that. I drove away without looking back. I went to the Hampton Inn on Route 9. It was the closest hotel I could afford while I figured out what to do next. I checked into the hotel for 1 week. I carried my suitcases to a generic room that smelled like cleaning products. I sat on the cheap bedspread and stared at myself in the mirror. Who was this woman looking back at me? A widow, now childless, homeless, and apparently worthless to the only family she had left. But as I sat there in that ugly hotel room, something unexpected began to grow inside me. Not just sadness, though that was there too. Something sharper. Something that felt almost like ... anticipation. Stephanie thought she'd won. She thought she'd successfully gotten rid of the inconvenient mother-in-law and claimed her prize. What she didn't know was that David had been a much better son than she ever gave him credit for. 2 weeks into my hotel stay, just as I was starting to seriously worry about running out of money, I got a phone call. Mrs. Fairfield, this is James Morrison from Morrison & Associates. I handled your son's legal matters. Yes, Mr. Morrison. I remember meeting you. I'm calling to tell you that we've finished the legal process, and there will be an official reading of David's will next Tuesday at 2 p.m. in my office. Your presence is required. My presence was required. I sat up straighter. I'm sorry, but I think there might be some confusion. Stephanie seemed to think, Mrs. Fairfield, Mr. Morrison interrupted gently. I can only tell you what David's will says, and it specifically names you as someone who receives something. I'll see you next Tuesday at 2 p.m. After he hung up, I stared at my phone for a long time. David had left me something after all. Probably some small keepsake. Maybe his father's watch or the photo albums from when he was a kid. Stephanie wouldn't be happy about it, that she'd have to accept whatever David had decided. I spent that weekend looking at apartments online. I looked at senior living communities and small one-bedroom rentals I could afford. My savings account could cover another week at the hotel, plus the first month's rent and security deposit for a new place. But I need to be very careful with money. My social security check and the small pension from my teaching career would have to stretch further than I'd originally planned. At 1:45 p.m. the following Tuesday, I sat in the parking lot of Morrison & Associates law office. I watched Stephanie get out of a fancy silver BMW. She was wearing an expensive black dress. She'd brought someone with her, a man in a fancy suit who kept looking at his phone. When I walked into the waiting area, Stephanie's face got dark with anger. What is she doing here? She demanded, talking to the receptionist. Mrs. Fairfield is here for the will reading, the young woman replied professionally. Which Mrs. Fairfield? Stephanie's voice got louder. Both of you, apparently. The man in the suit, who I now recognized as Stephanie's brother Marcus, leaned over and whispered something to her. She nodded and sat down across the room from me. She made it very clear that whatever temporary politeness might have existed between us was officially over. Mr. Morrison appeared exactly at 2 p.m. He was a kind-looking man in his 60s, with silver hair and glasses. He led us into his office. Ladies, gentlemen, he began, sitting behind his big desk. I know this is a difficult time, but David was very specific about his wishes. I'll read the will completely, and then we can discuss any questions. Stephanie sat forward eagerly. Her hands were clasped in her lap. Marcus had pulled out a notepad and was getting ready to take notes. I simply folded my hands and waited. The first part of the will was exactly what I expected. Stephanie inherited the house, the cars, David's retirement accounts, and his life insurance money. She nodded approvingly at each item. She kept glancing at me with a look that seemed like satisfaction. Then Mr. Morrison's voice changed slightly, and I knew something important was coming. There is, however, One final item that David added just 3 months ago. The whole atmosphere in the room shifted. Stephanie stopped nodding and leaned forward. Her eyes got sharp with sudden attention. Marcus put down his pen. I found myself holding my breath. Mr. Morrison cleared his throat and continued reading. To my mother, Eleanor Fairfield, who provided the down payment for our home and has never asked to be paid back. I leave the contents of safety deposit box number 337 at First National Bank, along with all the papers and account information inside it. What safety deposit box? Stephanie's voice was sharp. David never mentioned a safety deposit box. Mr. Morrison looked up from the document. Apparently, it was something he kept private. He was very specific that the contents should go to his mother. I was as surprised as Stephanie, but for different reasons. David had never mentioned a safety deposit box to me either. What could he possibly have put there that was meant for me? What's in it? Marcus asked. I have no idea, Mr. Morrison replied honestly. David simply provided the bank information and instructions that Mrs. Eleanor Fairfield should have full access when he died. Stephanie's face turned red with anger. This is ridiculous. If there's anything valuable in that box, it should be part of everything else. We need to fight this legally. You're certainly free to try, Mr. Morrison said calmly. But the instructions are very clear, and David was completely mentally sound when he added this to his will. I witnessed the document myself. When exactly did he add this? I asked quietly. Mr. Morrison checked his notes. 3 months ago. February 15th. He came in specifically to add this part. February 15th. I remembered that date clearly. It was the day after Valentine's Day. David had seemed unusually quiet during our family dinner that night. Stephanie had been complaining about something, the neighbor's dog, I think. And David had barely said a word throughout the whole meal. This is a waste of time, Stephanie snapped, standing up suddenly. Marcus, let's go. We'll challenge this tomorrow. Actually, Mr. Morrison said, pulling out another document. Before you leave, I need to tell you both that David left specific instructions for his mother about the safety deposit box. Mrs. Fairfield. He wanted you to access it within the next few days. Once you've completed the necessary paperwork with the bank. He handed me a sealed envelope. These are the bank documents and his personal key. The bank will need to verify the death certificate and process some paperwork before you can get into the box. Usually takes about 3 business days. Stephanie's eyes locked onto the envelope in my hands like a hawk watching a mouse. I'm coming with you to the bank. I'm afraid that's not possible, Mr. Morrison said. The safety deposit box access is restricted to Mrs. Eleanor Fairfield only. Bank policy. This is insane, Stephanie sputtered. How do we even know there's anything valuable in there? It could be empty or just sentimental junk. I stood up, holding the envelope carefully. I suppose we'll find out next week. As we left the office, I could feel Stephanie's eyes staring at my back. In the parking lot, she cornered me beside my car. Eleanor, let's be reasonable about this, she said. Whatever's in that box, we should share it. David would have wanted his wife to benefit from anything he left behind. For the first time since David's death, I almost smiled. You made it very clear that you don't believe David would have left me anything. Now suddenly you're concerned about sharing. I'm just saying, you're saying whatever you think will get you access to that safety deposit box. I unlocked my car door. But David was very specific. The contents are mine. Her mask slipped completely then. I could see the cold calculation underneath. Don't forget, Eleanor, you're homeless. You need my goodwill more than I need yours. I paused with my hand on the car door. Actually, Stephanie, I don't think I need anything from you at all. 3 business days later, after providing the death certificate and completing the bank's paperwork, I finally stood before safety deposit box number 337 at First National Bank. The bank manager, Mrs. Peterson was expecting me. She'd obviously been told about the situation because she offered her sympathy and personally escorted me to the vault area. Box 337 is one of our larger units, she explained as we walked through the security doors. Your son rented it about 5 years ago and visited quite regularly. 5 years? David had been planning something for 5 years. Mrs. Peterson used her master key while I inserted David's key. The box slid out smoothly. It was big, about the size of a briefcase, and surprisingly heavy. Take all the time you need, Mrs. Peterson said, showing me to a private viewing room. I'll be at my desk when you're finished. Alone in the small room with no windows, I lifted the lid of the safety deposit box. The first thing I saw was a letter addressed to me in David's familiar handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it. Dear Mom, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. And Stephanie has probably shown you exactly who she really is. I'm sorry for that, but I'm not surprised. I've known for years what kind of person I married, and I've been preparing for this possibility. My heart started racing as I kept reading. You gave us $40,000 for our house down payment. I know you thought of it as a loan, even though you never asked to be paid back. I've been investing that money for the past 5 years, adding to it whenever possible. The money in the accounts that come with this isn't just paying you back. It's what careful investing has grown into. I set the letter down with shaking hands and looked at the documents underneath. Bank statements, investment portfolios, account numbers. My eyes scanned the numbers, trying to make sense of them. $185,000 in various investment accounts, all in my name, all accessible with proper documentation. I picked up David's letter again, hardly believing what I was reading. I also discovered that Stephanie has been telling people you contribute nothing to our household. What she doesn't mention is that our house payment has been automatically paid from my salary account the entire time you've lived with us. Any money you've given us went straight into investments for your future. The letter continued. I've been keeping records of everything, Mum. Every email, every text message, every casual comment she's made about you. It's all in the folder labeled documentation. I thought you should know what kind of person has been living in our house. My vision blurred with tears as I reached for the folder he'd mentioned. Inside were printed emails, text message screenshots, even photos of credit card statements. Evidence of years of manipulation and lies. The final paragraph of David's letter made tears stream down my face. You deserve so much better than the way she's treated you. Take this money and build yourself a life where no one can make you feel unwanted ever again. And Mum, don't tell Stephanie about any of this until you're safely away from her. Trust me on this one. All my love. David. I sat in that little room for nearly an hour, reading through everything David had left for me. By the time I came out, I had a clear picture of exactly how my daughter-in-law had been manipulating both of us for years. Mrs. Peterson helped me transfer all the documents to a large envelope. She explained how to access the investment accounts. As I walked to my car, my phone rang. Eleanor. Stephanie's voice was fake sweet. I was wondering if you'd like to come by for lunch today. We could discuss what you found in the safety deposit box. I smiled at my reflection in the car window. That's very kind of you, Stephanie. I'll be there at noon. It was time for Stephanie to learn that sometimes the people you look down on are the ones who surprise you most. Arrived at Stephanie's house. Excuse me. Her house now at exactly noon. I was carrying a small gift bag and wearing my best poker face. She answered the door in a fancy white dress, all smiles and fake warmth. Eleanor, I'm so glad you came. I've made your favorite chicken salad. Funny how she remembered my favorite foods now that she wanted something from me. The dining room table was set with her wedding china and fresh flowers. Stephanie had clearly put a lot of effort into this performance. She poured iced tea and talked about the weather, while I sat quietly, watching her work up to what she really wanted to discuss. So, she finally said, settling into her chair, I've been thinking about yesterday. About the safety deposit box. Have you? I sipped my tea calmly. I know we've had our differences, but David would want us to support each other through this difficult time. Family should stick together. Family. That was rich coming from the woman who'd thrown me out the day after her husband's funeral. I couldn't agree more, I said evenly. Stephanie's eyes lit up. She clearly thought she'd found an opening. I'm so relieved to hear you say that. I was worried you might be angry about having to find your own place so quickly. But you understand I needed space to process my grief. Of course, I took a bite of chicken salad. Grief affects everyone differently. Exactly. She leaned forward eagerly. So, about what David left you? I was thinking we could combine our resources. Pull together whatever was in that box with David's life insurance. Maybe invest it together. I have some wonderful financial advisors. I bet she did. That's very thoughtful, Stephanie. But I'm curious, what makes you think there was anything valuable in the safety deposit box? She paused, clearly not expecting the question. Well, David was always so private about certain financial matters. He must have had a reason for keeping something separate. Private? That's an interesting choice of words. You know what I mean. She waved her hand dismissively. Men and their financial planning. They never tell us wives everything. I set down my fork and looked directly at her. Actually, Stephanie, I think David told you exactly as much as he thought you needed to know. Something flickered in her eyes, uncertainty. Maybe a hint of fear. What did you find in the box, Eleanor? The moment of truth was approaching, but I wasn't quite ready to play that card yet. Instead, I reached for the gift bag I'd brought. I brought you something, I said, pulling out a small wrapped package. A little thank you gift. She unwrapped it eagerly. Inside was a framed photograph of David from his college graduation. Her face softened slightly. Oh, Eleanor. This is lovely. Thank you. I thought you should have it. After all, you were such a devoted wife. The way I said devoted wasn't lost on her. She looked up sharply, searching my face for hidden meaning. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing at all. I'm just appreciating how well you took care of my son. Stephanie set the photograph down carefully. Her whole manner was changing. The fake sweetness was disappearing, replaced by something more cautious. Eleanor, you're being mysterious. Just tell me what was in the safety deposit box. I smiled and took another sip of tea. Documents, mostly. Very interesting reading material. What kind of documents? Oh, you know. Financial records. Investment statements. Some letters. I paused meaningfully. Quite a few printed emails and text messages. The color drained from Stephanie's face. Text messages. David was quite thorough in his record keeping, especially toward the end. I pulled out my phone and opened the photos David had taken of various text conversations. Would you like to see one? This is from about 6 months ago. I turned the screen toward her, showing a screenshot of her texting her sister. God, I can't wait until that old bat finally moves out. Then we can turn her room into the home gym I've been wanting. Stephanie lunged for my phone, but I pulled it back smoothly. There are dozens more, I said conversationally. David was apparently very good at keeping records. This next one is particularly interesting. It's you texting Marcus about how you've been convincing David that I should pay household expenses, when the house payment was already budgeted from his salary. Stop. Stephanie's voice was barely a whisper. And then there's the email where you're laughing with your sister about how gullible I am. How easy it was to make me feel like a burden when you'd already planned to kick me out after David died. I set my phone down and looked at her, with what I hoped was calm curiosity. That was forward thinking of you, by the way. Planning my removal while David was still alive. Stephanie's composure finally cracked completely. He had no right to save private messages. Actually, he had every right. It was his house, and you were discussing his mother. I leaned back in my chair. The question is, what are we going to do about this situation? What do you want? The mask was completely off now. Want? I don't want anything from you, Stephanie. I never did. Then why are you doing this? What's the point of humiliating me? I considered the question seriously. You know, you're right. There's no point in humiliating you. You've done that perfectly well yourself. I don't understand. You threw me out of my home the day after my son's funeral. You told me I was worthless, that David felt sorry for me, that I contributed nothing to your household. I stood up slowly. But here's what you didn't understand about David. He saw everything. Every cruel comment. Every manipulation. Every lie you told. Stephanie was gripping the edge of the table. Her knuckles were white.